Hello, Jacob here. Today we're going to talk about Acorn Woman and a Greedy Shaman and some consequences to abusing our power. As I was reading this story today from Takelma text, we're continuing on this series from Francis Johnson's Takelma text. There's a short story in here about Acorn Woman and killing a shaman. The story brings up a lot of questions and teachings, I'd say, around if you do have power over someone or something, even if they themselves can't fight back, there are consequences, often in the form of spiritual consequences, to abusing and exploiting that power. I think about, we live in a world where we have lots of different forms of power, not just spiritual, maybe more magical powers like from shamans. But there's a lot of forms of power over somebody. You have social power, political power, economic power. Just think about it from the power of a parent over a child. They are under your power, especially when they're little, and you are responsible to that, even if they can't fight back. There's consequences to harming and abusing someone under your power. It doesn't always come instantly, but there's a belief from this teaching in an indigenous lens, and I think from a lot of spiritual teachings, that people all do notice, people do see that. If you're disrespectful to those things, to those people, to those beings, prices will be paid. In this story, it talks about Acorn Woman, and I believe, well, they call her in this story the Acorn Chieftainess, but it often refers to, especially in the Takelma area down near Medford, which is where my tribal community comes from. The mountain there, Mount McLaughlin, is often described as Acorn Woman, and she would come down during the summer, walk around, and then in the winter she would go back to the mountain. In this story, there's a brief description of a shaman that was using their wind power, their blow and create wind to knock down all the acorns and then harvest them and dry them out. Acorn Woman heard about this, and so she turned herself into an acorn and sat up in a tree. And when the shaman came and blew her down, she decided that she was going to blow down the shaman, kill him, and she dried him out. They described it as almost like venison. This shaman was killed. It's a simple story, and it has more kind of gruesome details in it that might be necessary, but not necessarily for this exploration. But I think when a lot of people think about gathering in a respectful way, when we hunt, when we fish, when we take plants, there's a deeper level of understanding that I can't just take. It doesn't belong to me. I'm taking a life. I'm asking for a life when I consume foods from another being. And so even if I have the power, the gun, the axe, this chainsaw, the way that I go about asking for these things, for the gifts of the world, matters. If I'm disrespectful and I just take and take and take, there's often consequences. In this case, spiritual consequences, actual guardian of those things, right? You can imagine if you just came down and mowed down a forest and there was guardians there. And there's lots of stories around guardians of the woods. They might seek revenge. You can hear chickens in the background. You know, that's a good example, right? Like these chickens here. If I were to be disrespectful to them, starve them, abuse them, even though they have no power to stop me with their own claws and teeth, maybe a little, there could be consequences to that. And if I continue to be abusive and exploitive to the beings that are under my care, that are under my power, there's a price to pay. And I think it's important to remember that, especially as humans, we have so many technologies and powers to shape the world and to shape each other and have power over other humans. And we remember those consequences, and that respect is important when you have power. To remember that people do see, people do know. One way or another, the price will be paid. And so just remembering as we walk through this world and we gain things and we have responsibilities over others, that we take that and we walk with great caring and respect through this world. With that, I'll close out. Aho, blessings, safe journeys. Bye.